when we think about everything that Argentina has to bring to this international window and specifically playing against the U.S., Sandra, what did you take away from Argentina's play tonight?
Lisa, it's tough, because we're coming off of we're just a couple weeks removed from like a month where we were celebrating like Latin American History Month, and it was tough knowing that this was going to be not only an opponent that this United States gold medal winning team was going to go up against, but knowing what the players on this team have sort of been going through for years and years and years. And so not only were they this third game that were kind of tacked on through this window, there are moments of opportunity here, not only for the United States. We were able to see in which they were tested a little bit because they got presented with this 5-back. It took them 37, 38 minutes to get that breakthrough. And on the other side of that coin, we know that Argentina is maybe lining up that way because these are the tactics that they have to present to this gold medal winning caliber type of team, to this number one ranked team in the world. And these are players on a national team program who have gone through year in, year out discourse with their federation. And there's a reason why there were only 20 players called into this roster, into this camp. There's a reason why a third of this roster was so young and didn't have a lot of caps of their own. I think there was one player that had 85 caps. It was their captain. And so it's just like there are all these layers within this program that I think we have to know. And that's part of what happens, I think, when you find yourself as a player playing for a program like this. When you go up against the United States, there are opportunities for you to go ahead and test yourself against the number one team in the world. But there's opportunity to chat about some of that ongoing discourse with the national team program, that here they are in 2024 still fighting for some minimum standards. I mean, this is a program that had 3 players that had to remove themselves from a national team window just in May of this year. And we're talking about just a couple months after the United States saw them in a Gold Cup competition. Their prominent goalkeeper, in Laura Antiveros, Juliana Cruz, a defender, their midfielder, Lorena Benitez, someone that a name that people are familiar with at this point. They just reached a boiling point. There's this weird sort of moment where there's just a tipping point for players and they find themselves coming in and out, and the federation never has a comment about it. Argentina's footballing federation never has a comment about it or doesn't want to address it, which for me speaks as loud as anything when it comes to talking about this team and the failure of minimum standards that exist for Argentina as just one of many programs across the globe in women's soccer that they're fighting for those things. So it's tough for me to watch a game like this, because like here we are talking about the three goals that they got put up on Argentina, but we're not talking about this in the same way that we did with Iceland. With Iceland, we're talking about a 13th team that's ranked in the world, how they are qualified for another Euro, how they have all of these things going for them in a good trajectory, and it's the opposite for Argentina. So there are stretches of this game that are tough to sort of see and talk about, because you could see that some of the disorganization or the lack of tactics, or the lack of literally anything. I think the possession era at one time was like 72 to like 28. Like you could see that there's a struggle there, but there's so many more complex layers to why it looks and feels the way that it does on the pitch. And at the end of the day, when we do get to see these types of teams go up against the United States, where we know they're going to get tested in a low block or in a 5-back, the other side of that is for us to recognize the fact that women's soccer across the globe, in terms of minimum standards, is not an equal playing field.
Sandra, thank you so much for chatting about that, bringing light to it, because it is so necessary. Sideline reporter for the match, Melissa Ortiz, she did touch on it too a little bit. Even Emma Hayes in the pregame, one of the things she talked about was how across the board there has to be better standards, even for the women's national programs and national programs around the world. It's a good opportunity for Argentina to play the U.S., right? Because it allows us to talk about this and to give space for it. The U.S. now played against 2 different opponents in one international friendly, and those are some bonuses and pluses. When you think about, Darian, the way that Iceland played and how they tested the U.S. compared to Argentina and how they tested the U.S. What are some of the comparisons that you noted?
For Argentina, obviously, Sandra very well said, beautifully said. The standard absolutely needs to be better. They resorted to being in a lower block, trying to not come out, not pressing the U.S. If they did that, it would have exposed them even more so than we saw tonight, because they don't have good leadership. They don't have the foundations needed. So the safest bet is to sit in a low block and try to just plug those spaces and hit the U.S. on a counter or a set piece. And yes, that still causes problems for the U.S. It asks a lot of questions. How are you going to switch the point of attack? How are you going to make penetrating passes when it's so congested in that middle to attacking third for the United States and to the U.S.'s attacking half? And I like this. I think we saw players, like I said, Hal Hirschfeld, Gaetano, and Mace playing those long balls out of the back line that actually suited a lot of the players on the width for the United States. Versus against Iceland, it was a lot more of playing those penetrating passes, sometimes in the U.S.'s middle to defensive third, having to try to break those lines, try to counter, dribbling, breaking the press, because there was space offered for the United States to play in. And I like this. I think we got different glimpses of players that can read those pockets of space, that can understand the tactics of who they're going against. And it just looked good, because teams are going to look at the U.S. If I'm looking to play against the U.S., I'm thinking, oh my God, okay, so they can switch from this to this on a dime. They can sub in Lynn Williams with fresh legs off the bench. Oh my God, okay, we're trying to press them. Let's change our entire game plan. There's so many threats that the U.S. now has that I think we have not seen from this team. I don't think that's been required of this team in so long. And that's the Emma Hayes effect.
That's a really good way to put it. It hasn't been asked of them to do this so often. And frankly, I think Emma Hayes is going to ask that of this group a lot. Not necessarily the opposition they play, but Hayes is going to force them to problem solve in these moments. There were 7 players that made their debut during this international window: Yasmin Ryan, Hal Hirschfeld, Emily Sams, Emma Sears, Ava Gattino, Mandy Haught, and Alyssa Melanson. Of those players, who has solidified themselves on the U.S. women's national team with the full strength? That means Crystal Dunn back, Trinity Rodman back. Which of those players have solidified themselves?
Go ahead, Sandra.
Goodness, with the heavy hitters back?
With the heavy hitters back.
Yeah, that changes things.
That's who they're competing against. That's who they're competing against.
There's a lot of them, so I'm going to go with 2. I'm going to say I think Emma Sears did enough, and I think Emily Sams did enough.
Well, Emily Sams already has a gold medal. So.
I mean, come on.
It's so funny.
Actual minutes.
She's on the list. She's on the list. All right, Darian, what about you?
I'll also say Emily Sams, and I'll go Hal Hirschfeld. Do I think we saw the best of Hal Hirschfeld in this? No, but I like that she brings something different than Coffey and Albert, where she's not afraid to get stuck into tackles and hit you and set the tone of the game. Her playing out of that 6th position, her long balls. I think we saw spaces where, oh, wow, I have not noticed this about Hal Hirschfeld in her club play that I really saw in the national team, because it's such a different level where that's where she can get better. That's where she can become more of an elite player. And that's exciting for a player like her who just went to the freaking Olympics as a rookie with the national team. So we're not even close to her ceiling, but I think seeing that Hayes has so much trust in what she's seen in her play at club and her training at with the national team level and what she brings from a physicality standpoint and tempo to the game, I think she's got that position, and we need more depth at the 6.
I agree.
Need more crunch.
I agree completely. I love these shouts. Sam's definitely for me. I'm going to say Ava Gattino. I think she played very well, and Darian, can bring depth at the 6 because she can play as a center back. She can play as a 6. Yeah. I think if you're a versatile player like that, you also have the edge up on maybe someone else in the group. Okay, before we go, I have to ask, who didn't you see enough of in this camp? Who did you want to see more of? Darian?
I was looking away so you wouldn't go to me first.
I went first last time.
I'm going to say...
You have one?
I do. I'm going to just say Sanchez. I don't know if there was like a tweak or something muscular or something in this window where she wasn't able to get more time. But I want to see more. It almost sort of feels like she ran out of time there at the end. So more Sanchez for me.
I'll say, even though she got quite a bit of time, I don't think we saw the best of her, and that's Yasmin Ryan. I think she was put into that winger position, and maybe there's so many tactics you're learning and so much that comes with being thrown into a match on the jump that I think we saw her be in her head a bit. And I know she has so much more to offer, and she still was a great player on the pitch, but she has such special qualities that I don't think we saw enough of in the minutes that she got. So for me, she's a player that I actually really wanted to see her come into this last match, but we got playoffs, baby. We got one more regular season game. So Gotham needs her rested. She is a leader on that team. So I get it, Emma Hayes, but I hope she comes back into a camp and gets some good minutes.
We've got playoffs, NWSL playoffs. They start in just 2 weeks. The final regular season match day is this weekend. And tomorrow on Attacking Third, we are talking all about it. The U.S., they win 3-0 over Argentina. Join us tomorrow right here on YouTube live at 11 a.m. Eastern time. Sandra will be there. Darian's there. Aaron West is going to be there. We are doing awesome things talking about the final match day in the NWSL. Thanks everyone so much for joining us for tonight's recap. Make sure you follow Attacking Third wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a 5-star rating and review. You can also watch us on youtube.com/Attacking Third and watch us on the CBS Sports Golazo Network for all your women's football coverage. USA, they go undefeated in this friendly window. They beat Argentina 3-0, a brace from Naomi Girma, and she forces the own goal in this final matchup. Put her at the 9. Thanks, everyone, so much for joining us. For Sandra, Darian, and Mark, I'm Lisa. This was Attacking Third.